Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Cilinix Crypto and welcome to this new video, this emergency update on the markets. We will talk about everything you need to know. All right, so we'll talk about fundamentals, what's going on in the general, in the world right now, but how is that affecting financial markets? Then we'll talk about Bitcoin, we'll talk about XRP, we'll talk about Ethereum, and we will talk briefly about altcoins. But honestly, I don't really think that today, looking too much at altcoins, on the short term at least, I mean, long term, positioning yourself on altcoins and finding some good entries is still a good decision. But I think short term altcoins at this point of time are not interesting. But we'll talk about that in a moment. First of all, when we talk about the current fundamental situation, when we're talking about the headlines, obviously there's a lot going on in the world right now. I would still say that the one event and the one thing that is going on that's affecting the markets the most is the trade conflict between the United States and China. Now, the current situation is that today I think Trump said that tariffs will long-term not be useful. I think he also said that there will not be tariffs. I'm not sure how to judge those headlines, right? I mean, obviously, like in terms of what really has been discussed and what decisions have been made, it's unclear, right? And we don't know what's going on behind the closed doors of the trade negotiations between China and the United States. So yes, the remarks today were slightly bullish, and at least the stock markets actually bounced slightly on the news. But ultimately, the situation is still a little bit unclear. We know that there are meetings, we know that there are negotiations, but we don't know what's going to come out of that. So it's very much waiting for that. And obviously, other things that are going on in the world will matter as well. If something comes out, I'll let you know, but I don't want to spend too much time talking about those in depth in this video. What I do want to talk about is Bitcoin. All right, Bitcoin, in my opinion, still matters most in the market right now. You can see that the Bitcoin dominance is in an uptrend, both on the 12-hour time frame and the daily time frame. We have a major resistance level coming up relatively soon at 60.5. So it's going to be interesting to see how Bitcoin reacts to that level, and maybe if we can, maybe we will be able to find some sort of local top there so that altcoins can actually recover, or that we can see some Ethereum strength. Although I would argue that Ethereum has actually been relatively strong, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. But this is one of the key reasons why I think altcoins are not that interesting. Looking at these charts is another. All right, others and the total three, the two main altcoin indices, have found strong support, but are both still relatively weak. All right, and that also boils down to that Bitcoin dominance. But so far, even though we have hit strong support levels, there's not a lot of momentum coming from those. All right, so that's why I think altcoins right now, at least for today, tomorrow can be different, but at least for today, for me, they're all outlawed. But okay, so when we're talking about Bitcoin, I have a bearish bias. I already said this morning on X. And the key reason for that is that yesterday we had a deviation below 109.8 thousand. I spoke about that in my middle of the day market update yesterday. I said that's the main level, that's what we need to hold. If we break down below that, it's bad news and we can drop down into the low 100s. That's what I said. You can check that out for yourself as well. We dropped down below that with high volume and we were unable to reclaim that. So when I woke up this morning and I saw that, I said also on the premium feed, I think we're going to drop down lower. And in general, that is bearish. All right. And in general, when we're talking about the 12-hour time frame, for example, for Bitcoin, we have lost a significant support level right here at 109 and 108,000. Now, on the other hand, we have also hit a significant support level. But ultimately, when you have a breakdown like this, I think you have to be mildly realistic and say, all right, I have a bearish bias until otherwise is proven, right? So if we get good news and there the fundamentals come back, if we get good news and Bitcoin is able to reclaim that level, I would say at least around 109,500. If we're able to reclaim that for whatever reason, then I might turn bullish again. But until we have done that, I will be bearish. And I have to say, I mean, there's certain signs that are actually quite bullish for Bitcoin right here, right? And in general, when we're looking at the weekly time frame, I think this support level right here around 100,000 is incredibly strong. And I don't think for now, even if we get more bad news, I don't think we'll drop down below that, all right? So I'm telling you, I have a bearish bias. I think we can drop down lower. I think it's most likely we'll drop down lower, but not by much more. I don't expect us to drop down into 90,000 overnight, for example. And even 96, 97,000, where we also have a strong support level, I think is unlikely. And then on the other hand, to you know, to be a little bit optimistic here, 104,000, which is the main support level we have hit so far, is also a relevant support level. And right now we can actually see that although equities are relatively weak, right? You can see right here on the 1 hour time frame that the S&P 500 has actually pulled back slightly. Bitcoin is holding on relatively well, and we've been able, with quite a lot of volume, we've been able to hold the support level right here around 104,000. So those are early bullish signs for Bitcoin and therefore for the markets, but it's not enough for me to tell you that my bias is bullish. My bias is bearish, and it will be bearish unless we get one, good news, or a strong high volume reclaim. Until then, I'm mostly sidelined. And when we're talking about XRP, look, XRP got some amazing news yesterday, but XRP ultimately at this point of time is just following Bitcoin one-on-one. The key level to watch for XRP is a little bit lower. Like I would argue if XRP, and I'll show you right here on the lower time frames, I would argue if XRP is able to reclaim 2.3 or 2.32, I think that's enough to actually get some more stability and recovery. But again, unless we have done so, or until we have done so, I will remain relatively cautious and neutral to bearish in my bias. On Ethereum, I'm a little bit more bullish. I think Ethereum, if you look at the daily time frame right here, I think this still passes as a consolidation, all right? And I don't think, even if we get more bad news, like bad news would have to be very bad if we wanted to push Ethereum below this major support level between 36 and 3,500. I think it's most likely, given the current circumstances, that we will be able to hold support, and that ultimately Ethereum will be able to hold this structure right here, this ranging structure between 4,300 and 3,600 as its current range. I think we will be able to hold that. So I'm relatively optimistic about Ethereum. Bit of a bearish bias still on Bitcoin, bit of a bearish bias still on XRP. When we're talking about altcoins, I mean, yes, there's some manipulated coins such as BAS, XPIN, and IO. But outside of that, I would be on the cautious side and wait for Bitcoin to actually find some stability, and then we can talk altcoins again. But those are my thoughts for now. That's what I think you need to know. So hopefully it helps. For now, have a great day. Thank you for watching, and bye.